You know what decision I'll never have to make? Do I buy a car that's new or used? Because I'm buying used every single time. And here's my argument why you should do the same. The most obvious reason to buy used instead of new is the straight up price difference. For two comparable cars, the one that's used will be substantially cheaper than the one that's new. Comparing the average transaction prices, a new vehicle will cost north of $48,000, whereas used falls somewhere around $25,000, $27,000. Whether you're on a budget or you just can't get behind spending so much money on a car, used prices are financially more friendly. They appeal to more people with different financial circumstances, different preferences, and priorities. Especially when we're in economic environments like today where the price of everything has gone up a whole lot. If I actually have the opportunity to spend less on something that may be a necessity, I'm picking the more affordable option. Another benefit tied to the lower price points of used vehicles is the feature sets that you can get. The cars and trucks they make today have a ton of electronic features for the purposes of safety and utility and comfort. But the one problem with all these features is that they've driven vehicle prices up because they now cost more to manufacture. Lane departure systems, parking assistance, blindside cameras, infotainment screens, charging docks, all of that is baked into the sticker price. Here's where used cars come into play. Feature sets don't change a whole lot from one year to the next. In some cases, feature sets don't even change from a whole generation model to the next. I'm looking at you, Toyota. So odds are you won't have to buy the newest edition of a vehicle to get the extra stuff you feel you need or want. Instead of buying a new 2025 model that will definitely have those features, I promise you there's likely a used 2018 to 2020 model that has them too. On a dollar for dollar basis, that feature set is now costing you a hell of a lot less when going used. Oh, and if you're willing to spend the same amount of money on a used vehicle that you would be buying new, the feature set you'll get will likely be bigger. More features for the same price. So yeah, don't buy new just for the features, y'all. Moving on to how you finance your purchase. The lower prices of used vehicles directly impacts the overall costs of using an auto loan. In other words, if you can afford to pay a higher percentage of the car with cash instead of relying on high interest debt, you'll save on the total interest paid, and then you'll free up some cash flow every month with a lower car payment. If you only have $10,000 to put towards a car, you're covering almost 40% of the average used price, as opposed to 20% for something new. Using an auto loan to finance 60% of a car versus 80% does make a difference. And a best case scenario, you're more likely to find a used car that you can pay 100% cash for, avoiding an auto loan entirely. Now you might be saying, aren't the interest rates for used vehicles higher than the interest rates for new? Yes, that's usually true. But does it really matter? The average rate for a prime borrower buying a used car is 9.04%. The rate for the same borrower buying new is 6.89%. Now, using the expected prices for each type of vehicle with the same $10,000 to put down, let's compare the payments and the total interest paid. Note that we're assuming for simplicity a 60-month term, no incentives, no trade-in, and ignoring taxes and fees. If you were to buy used, your payments would be $353.22, and the total interest paid would be $4,193. If you were to buy new, your payments would explode to $750.47, and the total interest paid would almost double to $7,028. I know that's a simplified example, but my point is, when you're financing a new vehicle that's so much more expensive than a used one, it doesn't matter that the interest rate is a little lower. Those payments will be higher, and so will the total interest paid. Now, if a dealership is offering some badass financing incentives, that could change things. Just make sure to go back and do the math to verify. So we know the price point of a new car is on average higher than used. And when you throw in an auto loan, your payments and total interest paid will likely be higher too. But there's one more thing to consider when determining the cost of ownership. insurance. I want to be fair right off the bat by saying whether you pay a higher insurance premium for a new car versus a used one really depends on the insurance provider and the make and model. Sometimes it's more expensive, sometimes it's cheaper, but on average, you'll have a lower premium with a used car because you're insuring a less valuable asset. Like I said, it varies, especially when comparing cars that aren't too much older, but there's still a few $100s to be saved depending on your provider. And if you really want to save on coverage, the older you go, the less expensive it gets. Look at the difference a 10-year-old vehicle makes for many of the most popular cars and trucks out there. 30, 35, 40% less expensive to insure them. Everything up to this point is tied in some way to the biggest reason I will always buy used instead of new. And I think a lot of you can guess. That's depreciation. Depreciation alone is what makes buying a new vehicle a really poor financial decision. It's the equivalent of burning 10% of your money the day you sign those papers and drive off the lot. A car's depreciation over time does depend on make and model, but on average, a vehicle will lose 30% of its value within 5 years. And a huge chunk of that is front-loaded the first 2 years. And if you purchase something like a cheap Grand Cherokee, the depreciation rate can be even worse. Depreciation happens because our cars are physical machinery, prone to damage, malfunctions, outdated technology, and a general sense of, if it's used, I won't get the same utility out of it, which is then all reflected in the price someone is willing to pay for it. The reason cars don't make great financial assets is because they struggle to retain their value. They're more so tools, like a piece of factory equipment. So losing money on a new vehicle is almost a guarantee. The best thing to do if you want a really nice car is buy a used one right after the period it depreciates the most, usually 3 to 4 years later. That's recent enough to where you'll get the feature set you want, it still feels new, and your purchase will maintain its value better because you avoided the biggest depreciation hit. Couple that with choosing a brand like Toyota and taking care of it, and you actually have a car someone is willing to pay above average for way down the line. The last thing I'll say is if your concern about buying used is reliability and how much it'll cost to maintain an older vehicle, with all the resources available to you now, don't be concerned. There is so much information and data on what types of cars last the longest, which brands are cheaper to work on, how often are certain vehicles recalled, customer reviews, auto shop reviews, YouTube videos, etc. You have everything you could ever need to make an informed decision about what used vehicles will be reliable, inexpensive to maintain, and will hold their value better. And if you're still on the fence, have a trusted mechanic go with you to check out the vehicle before you buy it. Hey, that's actually another reason to buy used instead of new. New models don't have a lot of data and reviews to warn you about potential issues, especially if it's a generation rolling out an untested engine or untested transmission. Remember that warranties do have an expiration date. All right, y'all, let's leave it there. My argument for always buying a used car instead of new: they're more affordable, both in price and financing. You can get awesome feature sets. Insurance is typically cheaper. You can mitigate depreciation, and you have the data to say what cars are actually reliable. Hopefully this video helps you out on your next car purchase. If you like this type of video, like this video, and consider subscribing if you aren't already. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, or feel free to email me at askalexherrera@gmail.com. As always, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care of yourself, and best of luck.